Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
And as to violence, it's easy to pick out the least committed crime in America and the 4,700 Black people that were arrested for said crime in 2018 and try to make it like that small percent of the population has anything to do with the rest of Black America. But if you want to pick out all of the robbers and murderers in the Black community, which make up 0.09% of our population, not even 1% of 1% of the population, and make it like it's an epidemic. If you want to say that we're catering to the lowest common denominator of society, then you better call these whites out too.
To me, being a Black conservative is not a trend. It is not just being a Trump supporter. It is about doing the hard work and the research and learning the things, the things behind what conservatism, the foundation of what conservatism really is, really. And I came across something in Shelby Steele's book that hit me like a truck, and it has stuck with me and it has transformed me. And I hope that when I repeat this to you, it will transform you, Black Americans, to realize that there is something very ugly and broken about our culture. And the only way we're going to fix it is if we're honest about it. So Shelby Steele was talking in his book, I believe it was White Guilt, and he was talking about something unique about the culture of Black Americans that you will not find in any other culture in America. And it is the fact that we cater to the bottom denominator of our society. Let me explain what he means by that. He means to say that we are the only community that will get outraged and get up and organize and picket and protest to defend the bottom denominator of our community, meaning criminals, burglars, robbers, anything that you commit a crime. Only Black Americans will be out picketing to defend the criminals. It is not something that white Americans do, not something that Jewish Americans do. You will be hard pressed to find a Jewish American who has a rap sheet as long as the day, and something bad happens to that person and Jewish people are using their platform to speak out in defense of that person. It won't happen.
So Candace Owens is an irritation to me. I really want to push back on this book, White Guilt, and the assertion that she just made. The only difference between the uplifting, as she wants to call it, and I don't think Black people uplift criminals per se. I think we defend injustice and we say that even if a person is a criminal, so for example, in the case of George Floyd was not a great guy, but that doesn't mean that it was appropriate for that cop to kill him the way that he did. In fact, the cop didn't know Floyd's history. It's not like when a Black person is walking around, you just know that they were a violent criminal or something like that. That behavior was engaged in because he thought he could get away with it, just period. So I just want to put that out there. Second, I want to address this concept that whites don't lift up the, most base in their society. The thing is that white people white men specifically, account for almost 70% of our representatives. So white people as a whole account for about 70%. And of that 70%, most of those are white men. And in Western countries that have been conquered by Europeans, we see all the time that some of the most revered figures in our history books, some of the most revered figures in these countries are mass murderers. So the only difference is nobody took them to jail and they don't have a rap sheet, so to speak, because they were considered amazing. So we had people like Cecil Rhodes, who was violent, who established the foundation for apartheid, who stole tons of land and founded De Beers Mining Company, you know, a diamond is forever, who is upheld by white society. And he was a mass murderer, a thief, and a villain of the highest sort. You have people like King Leopold II, who went into the Congo and killed 10 million people and maimed countless others. Killed 10 million. He killed more Congolese people than Jews died in the Holocaust by like double. And he's held up. There are statues that people are trying to pull down in these countries to this day. And the queens, let's just think of the whole empire of Great Britain, that went throughout the world massacring people. Let's even bring this to modern day, because everybody's going to say you're just using historical examples, but I'm using historical examples because I want to prove that this is a behavior that has been heralded for generations of whites and have committed mass genocide throughout the planet. In South America alone, they almost obliterated all Native people. If we bring it to modern day, something that's really flown out under the radar because of everything that's going on is the US's involvement in the Venezuela situation, where we're using special operative forces to start a coup in that country and have brought in a man that's known to have killed hundreds of millions of people throughout the world to help us with the Venezuela situation. Then we had the situation where Jordan Grudeau, again, going back to the Venezuela thing, all white people are doing is making excuses for him. First of all, we know that the United States was behind this, okay? But outside of that, all they're doing is making excuses for him. They aren't protesting because they don't have to protest. When you own media outlets, you don't have to protest. You can just put out news pieces. When you own, newspapers, you can just print stories. When you own the radio stations, you can just talk about it on the radio. They don't have to go out and protest. Protesting is for the powerless. People who don't have indoctrination stations that, individuals are tuning into every day via a screen to push and their narrative. But make no mistake, they are caping for Jordan Grudeau, who went in to basically kill a country's president, to kill Maduro. They're making all kinds of excuses. His head wasn't in reality. He was desperate for money. They're not calling him what he is. So what is she talking about? The thing is the degrees of it. White people do far more egregious things on far larger scales. And they definitely cape for each other, and they definitely uphold the villains in their society. Definitely. They will hold whole countries of villains up. They will hold individuals who are mass murderers up. Imagine if we held Hitler up the way King Leopold was held up. Imagine if we held Hitler up. White on white violence. What Hitler engaged in. White Aryans attacking white Jews. This white on white violence. Imagine if we held him up the way that Cecil Rhodes is held up. The way a lot of our American presidents who were slaveholders are held up. Imagine if we were stamping, Hitler's face on money. If we were teaching Hitler was a great guy in history books. But we do that with white villains all the time. The thing is that it's done differently because they have the systems in place to do it in a way that is reputable, because they don't have rap sheets, because people don't call them criminals despite criminal behavior. So I don't like these false equivalencies. The rapists set the bar for what rape is. So when they rape people, it's not rape, but when you rape people, you get a rap sheet. And I'm speaking in this figurative way. The thieves, when they steal things, they're also setting the bar for who else gets called a thief. So you can go in and steal a whole country, resources, and human beings. And I don't want to hear about this is all in the past, because it's not all in the past. I mean, there is a human safari right now, a human safari with black people. And it's the British government who went in there and first massacred all those individuals. Massacred 6 out of 10 tribes of people. The British government did that, and then handed those human beings and their land over to India, who then turned it into a safari. This is recent history. This is modern history. This is right now history. So, yes, white people hold up the vagrants in their society. They just do it on television. They just do it in the history books. They just do it on the radio. They just do it in the newspapers. They do defend the vagrants in their society. 2 U.S. special military ops were just caught trying to kill the president of another country and start a coup in their country. And white people went on to their television stations. They went on to their radio stations. They published on online journals and in physical journals that the men were desperate for money, that their heads weren't in reality, that they were traumatized. It was 99.9 excuses. Did they get out there and protest? No, because you don't have to protest. You don't have to protest when you own everything. You can just spin the narrative. You can just defend them. You don't have to get out there with signs and try to be heard. When you own all the outlets that people tune into to hear your voice. Which is why, on another note, we need to unplug. But let's get back to what Miss Owens, who clearly doesn't have cohesive logic, has to say.
Same for white Americans. Not a single white American is out there defending Derek Chauvin. They will dispose of the people that they think are at the bottom of their society, and they will instead uplift the people that are at the top of their society, which means that they're raising their average very easily. When you rally behind the people that are doing the good things in your society, as opposed to people that are doing bad things in society, you raise your average. So we have collectively lowered our average because over the last 5 years, it has become extremely fashionable for us to martyr criminals.
So if we lower our average, right, by martyring criminals, then how low is the white average? If they're martyring people who are mass murderers, rapists, violent, to the tune of like millions and millions of people, steal land, steal resources, if they are martyring those people, how low is their denominator? Like if we really want to use this logic, hey, I'm not saying that her logic is right. I'm just saying, if we want to use your logic, Candace, how low is the denominator of white people? I mean, she's playing the race game. I'm not playing the race game. I'm just bringing up race because she wants to do it. Because we're going to do this whole thing. She's going to play and I'm going to play. And I'm going to win.
It's unbelievable. Not even Latinos do this. They will not martyr their criminals. They do not put the names of their criminals on shirts. They don't buy posters of their criminals. They don't get celebrities to speak out.
I thought Andrew Jackson was on a $20 bill. Am I tripping? Andrew Jackson, his face is on the $20 bill, right? He was a slaveholder. Oh, but I guess because slavery wasn't illegal, it's okay. Because it's easy when you make the rules. No, Andrew Jackson didn't get a t-shirt, but every time I have to pull out a $20 bill, I got to look at his slave-holding face. So no, I guess white people don't put criminals on t-shirts. They put them on their money. James Monroe, Martin Van Buren, William Henry Harrison. Have you heard these names before? I'm sure you have. Oh, it seems that white people do the same thing. They just do it on a bigger scale. See, you don't need to put anybody on a t-shirt when you can put them in a history book. You don't need to put anybody on a t-shirt when you can stick them on some money. You don't need to put anybody on a t-shirt when you can build a whole monument for them. Just build a monument. Put their faces inside of the courthouse. Put their faces on side of mountains. Put their faces on giant memorials in your state's capital. Nah, they don't put them on t-shirts. You're right, Candace. They don't. They got something better than t-shirts.
About their criminals and in defense of their criminals, they just say, you are a criminal, goodbye, right? That is just, but Black Americans were unique, and it is incredible because we dismiss people that are at the top of our communities. Bye-bye Condoleezza Rice, you're a coon. Bye-bye Larry Elder, you're a coon. Bye-bye Shelby Steele, Thomas Sowell, coons, Uncle Tom's gone. Bye, hate you. Here we are, George Floyd, you are a martyr and a hero. Now, when I first saw the story circulating, everybody wanted to jump on and make him out to be the modern day Martin Luther King. He was just getting his life together. He was out there doing good things. He was making music. Based off the video I saw and the 911 transcript, that just didn't sound accurate to me. But I wanted to let everybody play pretend because it was fashionable and it was trending. I mean, first and foremost, the person who called 911 clearly said that he was on drugs, that something was wrong, but he was not sober. And the person couldn't make out what drug he was on if you read the 911 transcripts. Beyond that, if you look at a video, you will see, which the media has tried to censor, when he is leaning against the wall, when the cop initially puts George Floyd against the wall, he drops a white baggie of a substance on the ground. I don't know what it is. It could be cocaine. God knows what it is in that little baggie, but he does drop it beside him. So I then decided to take a dive and to look at his record. George Floyd, what is his record? Does it matter? Me personally, I think if you spend some time in prison, you make a mistake, I'm a big believer that society should forgive you, especially when you're young and you have a first offense. I think it can be very easy to get caught up in the system. I have used my platform to speak out against that, to try to box people in and pretend that they are always criminals. I believe in second chances. I don't know that I believe in third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and ninth chances. So I wanted to show you guys what the media has not been reporting on. You can say this is not a value, but I'm going to tell you why it is a value. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. 1998, George Floyd spent his first prison stint 10 months for theft with a firearm. Okay, I believe in second chances, and 1998 is a very long time ago. Again, 4 years later, in 2002, he spent 8 months in prison for a cocaine offense. Different offense. We're talking about a drug offense. Okay, you can say that was another mistake. But then 2 years later, he spends another 10 months for a cocaine offense. I guess just another mistake. 2005, he spends another 10 months for a cocaine offense. This time, they stipulated that he had less than 1 gram, and he went back to prison. Now, the most important crime that he committed is the one that he spent prison time for, and 5 years for, in prison. And I want to paint this picture because this is what makes me feel disgusted in Black America, because we are so willing to let Black victims who are victims of Black crime, we have no defense for them. Black on Black crime, we don't care about. Imagine you are a pregnant woman, because this is what happened in this scenario. You are a pregnant woman and you receive a knock at your door. And it is a person that says they work for the water department. So you waddle your pregnant butt to the door and you open it, only to realize the person standing at your door does not work for the water department. You very quickly try to slam the door closed, at which point a Ford with 5 other Black men pulls up into the front yard, and 5 men jump out of the car, one of which is George Floyd, and he jams his way into your home. Now, you are pregnant, and at this point, George Floyd takes a gun and points it to your stomach, threatening you. You are screaming, and you are crying for your life. And you don't know if you're going to make it out of this situation alive. At this point, George Floyd puts you into your living room and instructs his friend who is with him to watch you, his armed friend, to make sure that you don't move from the living room as they ransack your home looking for drugs and money.
So here's the thing. I did a video on my members page called Ahmaud Arbery Deserved to Die. And this is the narrative, okay? Here's the narrative. Egregious things only count when they're done to perfect people, okay? When you do something egregious to somebody who's imperfect, then they got it coming. So basically, anytime, because again, when a person is just walking around the street, you don't know that they're a criminal, right? You don't know that they're a drug addict unless they're just totally tweaked out, right? A lot of times when a person's walking around, there's not a sign over our head with like a blueprint or like a list of stuff that we've done in our lives. So when people engage in egregious activities, then you don't know that. That doesn't mean that you then have carte blanche to treat them any way that you want. It doesn't. Now, I think obviously there are exceptions to this rule. If somebody is being raped If you stab the person in the head, okay, they had that coming. But if I'm trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill, which it hasn't been proven he was trying to do that, but if I was trying to pass a counterfeit $20 bill, you don't then get to suffocate me to death on the street and then lean on my dead body for 4 minutes. You don't get to do that, because you suffocating me has nothing to do with the $20 bill. You suffocating me doesn't have to do with something I did 4 years ago. You know what I mean? It's not like Chauvin was taking revenge on this man because of the fact that he had attacked a pregnant lady 4 years prior. Chauvin was just meeting this man and was acting because he thought he could act with impunity. Now, I don't believe in treating this man like he's a saint. But if I'm speaking for myself, my interest in him has nothing to do with whether he was a good person or a bad person. My interest is in the behavior of the police officer, is in the behavior of an institution where people are able to kill other people with impunity. That is a bigger problem to me than anything that George Floyd did or who he was. It's just indicative of a mindset within the institution and of protections that they have. Now, there's a lot of stupid stuff Black people are out here doing, like special dances in the honor of George Floyd. I saw some video that I did not watch with 2 twin girls. And I just know this because of the video title, 2 twin girls. And it was like 3 people, them and this dude, and they were wearing George Floyd and Black Lives Matter t-shirts, and they were going to do a dance. And it's like, I don't think this is a dancing situation. I don't think that we need to martyr George Floyd. I'm not going to cape for him being a good guy. Say no to drugs. You shouldn't be doing drugs. But none of this is relevant to the actual problem, which is an institution where a man can kill somebody slowly, lean on his dead body for 4 or 5 minutes, and then get up and walk away. That's the problem, not what George Floyd did, right? So I don't see what George Floyd's history has to do with people's outrage. Nobody has to misrepresent. Nobody needs a perfect sort of example of police brutality. Nobody needs a perfect human being to present to say that something is brutal. That's not necessary. Brutality is brutality. The innocence of the party doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, except for in cases of active violence. So like I said, if somebody's getting raped and then I stab them in the head. But somebody doing stuff 6 months ago, a year ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and then you being brutal to them for something totally unrelated, we don't get to play that game. And we don't get to minimize people's outrage by saying it's about George Floyd. It's not about George Floyd. His name is being used to call attention to what happened, which is somebody being killed slowly in public on the middle of a street, and then somebody getting up and walking away with impunity simply because they carry a badge. She's not stupid. She has to know this. But she wants to portray white people as victims. So let's keep playing the game.
I'm tired of us being considered, not smart, uneducated. Oh, I actually saw comments on a random website writing about the article. Oh, now wait for Black people to start rioting because Black people got to be Black people. I'm reading these comments and realizing that these people are writing in the comfort of anonymity. And they're writing that their perception of Black Americans are people that have very little facts and riot and are angry and have no idea about what's actually going on, or basically understanding that the whole concept of racialized police brutality is a myth.
I just don't understand why she's blaming all of this rioting and protesting on Black people. Most of the people I see are white. White people, white opportunists. Black Lives Matter is a homosexual organization. It has very little to do with black people and a whole lot to do with gays. So I wish black people that we would get together and have some sort of organized rebellion, some organized socio-political revolution. But the majority of these people are white. And a lot of these people don't care anything about George Floyd. So why are we painting the narrative that this is all going on because black people are outraged? Black, black, black. Like, no. There are a whole lot of white people out there, roll the footage. It's not black people. Not black people alone, if only, right? But that's simply not the case this time. So does she have any words for white people? Or only a cape?
Okay? All you have to do is sit down and do basic mathematics to discover that the entire narrative that we have been sold is a lie, okay? It's a lie. There is no racially targeted police brutality against Black Americans. In fact, if you are a white American and you commit a violent crime, you have a 25% higher chance of suffering a police fatality than Black people. Now, you might come across some people that are really bad at math, and they'll say, Candace, I know that only 9 Black people were killed last year unarmed by police officers, and 19 white people were killed unarmed by police officers. But Black Americans are only 13% of the population, and white Americans are 60% of the population. So that's why. No, that's not how math works. You don't look at the numbers according to how many Black people there are in America and how many white people there are in America, because not all white people commit crimes and not all Black people commit crimes. The numbers you look at is how many police encounters Black people had versus how many police encounters white Americans had. And when you look at those numbers, you will realize that the only thing we're doing disproportionately in this country is committing crimes. Take 2018, for example, right? 13% of the population, Black Americans, accounted for 40% of all of the murders and something like 50% of all violent offenses in the country. That's not normal. We are having more encounters with police.
All right, let's take a look at the UCR put out by the FBI. First of all of the violent offenders, Black people are not 50%. That is just a blatant lie. I don't even know why she would say that when we can all look at the Uniform Crime Report and see that that's not true. But there is an area where there are 2 areas where there are more Black offenders. And those are in murder and robbery. So let's look at it. We had 8,957 individuals who were arrested for murder, Of those, 53% were Black. And we know of those crimes, most of those are going to be Black men perpetrating against other Black men. It's unfortunate, there's no excuse for it. But let's be clear, in a population of 350 million people, 350 million people, 4,000 murders committed by Black people is not that big of a deal. I'm not saying murder is right. I'm just saying murder is the least committed violent crime in this country. It is the least committed violent crime. It's the pet of people who like to spew anti-Black rhetoric, like Candace, because you can say that it's 53% of Black people doing it. But what they don't tell you is that there were only 4,000 offenders. 4,000 offenders. What's the exact amount? 4,778 offenders. 4,700 offenders out of millions of Black people in 2018. So to act like Blacks are just on a murdering spree is kind of crazy. 4,700 out of 47 million people? I mean, we got to step back on this. We've got to step back on this because let's be clear, the crime report isn't breaking it up by sex at the level that we're looking at. It's just talking about offenders of all sexes. 47 million people, 4,700 of them are murderers in 2018. Oh, that sounds like a huge epidemic. Least committed crime, a minuscule, almost an immeasurable part of the Black population. But yet you always hear them spouting this statistic about murder like they're just Black people running around just killing people. It's disgusting, quite frankly, and deceptive. The other crime that Black people are ahead on is robbery. So there were, again, robbery is one of the least committed violent crimes. And there were, what, 36,000 offenders? A population of 47 million people, 36,000 offenders. 36,000 out of a population of 47 million. Oh, we're just thieves around here. I mean, these things are not computing. But as long as I'm going to be honest about where Black people need to fall back, okay, we have 40,000 hardened criminals just out there stealing, robbing people, and murdering. Which, really, to put this in even deeper perspective, is less than 1% of the Black population. Less than 1% of our population. 47 million Black people, less than 1% of our population is out there killing and robbing people. So to act like this is some epidemic in the Black community is really a little bit dramatic. Seriously, as I've said many times, most of our people are law-abiding citizens. Law-abiding citizens. But since we want to play the race game with Candace, and we want to play the criminality game, let's play. Let's look at rape, okay? Let's look at rape. Let's look at people who attack individuals that are weaker than them and rape them, okay? So there's far more rape going on than murder, okay? People are out there raping more than they're murdering. White people made up almost 70% of all rapes, 68% of all rape. White people. More specifically, white men. Is there a raping epidemic in the white community? Are white men rapists? Because the statistics say by 70% they are. So maybe they're rapists. Maybe we need to deal with the white raping problem that we have in this country. The white male rapist issue that we have in this country. You know, why we're taking care of the Black killers. Let's take care of the white rapists. I mean, because they're raping way more people than Black people are killing. In fact, there are more than double the number of white rapists caught in 2018 than there were Black killers. So if Black killing is an epidemic, then white rape is definitely an epidemic, right? White men getting out there and just raping people has got to be an epidemic. Because if we're going to tout this murder statistic for Black people, well, we better bring out the statistic that's over double of the Black male murder rate. And this is the white men raping people rate. But we don't like that game, right? We don't want to play the game. When we start really playing the game, nobody wants to play. Aggravated assault. 60% of aggravated assaults are white people. Aggravated assault is committed almost 30 times more than murder. And most people who engage in it are white. 61%. So while we're dealing with the white men raping people epidemic, because almost 70% of rapists are white, why don't we deal with this white people aggravating, being aggravated and assaulting people? Why don't we deal with this epidemic of white aggravated assault on people? I mean, white people commit aggravated assault at 40 times the rate that Black people commit murder. Let me repeat. White people commit aggravated assault at 40 times the rate that Black people commit murder. Don't believe me? Look at the FBI crime report. So do we want to play this game? Apparently, white people have a raping epidemic going on and an aggravated assault epidemic going on. Oh, but it doesn't stop there. Let's keep going. You know, larceny is a form of theft. 400,000 white people that committed larceny. They're leading on that by almost 70%. You follow what I'm saying? Do you see what happens when we play this who commits the most crime rabbit hole? We go down this rabbit hole. We find out that white people are rapists, out there committing aggravated assault. If you're gonna get something stolen from you, it's probably gonna be a white dude. But here's the kicker, because sex offenses seem to really be a problem in the white community. Of sex offenses that were not rape, 72% of them were committed by white people. Of sex offenses that were not rape, 72% were committed by white people. The same thing with offenses against families and children.
I just wanted to interject here because something that I did not touch on, which is driving under the influence. 81% of people that were driving while under the influence were white. Now, this can become a deadly crime. Obviously, driving while drunk can become a deadly crime because the car literally can become a weapon in the hands of somebody that's driving under the influence. But I also just wanted to add that in as well, including drug abuse violations, overwhelmingly to the tune of almost 1 million people, white people at a rate of 70% have more drug abuse violations. So I just wanted to add those to the narrative of rape, right? Other types of sex offenses, offenses against family and children, driving under the influence, drunkenness in general is overwhelmingly white people. So all of these crimes that degrade society, and I think we have to throw these in because when people are in these compromised states, driving under the influence, drunkenness, on drugs, right? When you have people 70 to 80% representation in those areas, that sort of behavior leads to violent crime, which is why, and I'm surprised Candace Owens lied about this when she said blacks commit over 50% of violent crime. Blacks commit around 35% of violent crime. According to the FBI UCR, around 37.4%. Whites commit over 50% of violent crime. They commit almost 60% of violent crime. 58.7% of all violent crimes are committed by white people. I don't know where she got this. Whites also commit 66.9% of all property crime. All crime on the whole. Now remember, she said it doesn't matter the size of the population. She said police encounters are what matter. So I'm taking the argument from the same side that Candace Owens took these arguments. I feel like people don't actually read the FBI UCR. Clearly, Candace didn't look over this document herself.
72% of them were committed by white people. Of sex offenses that were not rape, 72% were committed by white people. The same thing with offenses against families and children. Over 70% were committed by white people. So rape, sex offenses other than rape, and offenses against families and children, white people lead by leaps and bounds. And those crimes are committed far, far more than murder. So, okay, Candace, we'll clean up our 0.09% of our population, that 1/10% of the population, that 4,700 people, 4,700 people out of 47 million. When you make a call for white people to stop overwhelmingly raping, and abusing women and children. And tell them to put down the matches. Because you can't just burn your problems away. You can't just burn things up, white people. I mean, do you see how this game, if we could play this game, we could play this game all day. But you probably don't want to do it.
And despite having more encounters with police, white Americans are the ones that are being killed at a higher rate, okay? And Hispanic men at a higher rate. When you take a subset and you look over 100,000 encounters with police and with white Americans versus black Americans, you will discover that black Americans have less of a chance of having a fatal incident with police officers. Those are the facts. And I really don't care how those facts make you feel. I know it's so easy today, being a black person, to take the victim narrative, to believe that we're being brutalized by police officers, to believe that these 9 instances of police brutality that happen per annum are a really big deal, but we should shut up about the thousands of black Americans that are being killed by other black Americans, because it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter when we kill ourselves. It doesn't matter when we're on drugs. It doesn't matter when we're high. We want the police officers to hold our hands. And if, God forbid, something goes wrong in the midst of a police arrest, we want to riot and we want to burn down our own neighborhoods, because that makes so much sense. And we'll ally ourselves with the far left crazy Antifa thugs who know exactly what they're doing, who know exactly which group of Americans will be the most responsive and the most emotional. They get a couple of big celebrities to tell you Black Lives Matter, and put up a symbol while they're marching with you, because they all think we're stupid. That's the truth. The left thinks we're dumb, okay? And we have to stop proving them right.
Candace is right. The left does think we're dumb. But the right thinks that we think we're dumb. And by somebody telling us that being smart is siding with them, that we'll side with them because we want to be smart. Right? Everybody talks the black community like we're stupid. Everybody does. The left appeals to emotionality. The right appeals to, you don't have to be stupid. Just do what we say and then you'll be smart. They're both saying that we're dumb. Either side. And that's, I guess, one area Candace and I could agree on. I'm not pro-Antifa. I certainly am not pro-burning up our own neighborhoods. That seems really stupid to me. I've already spoken about that. But to pretend that the right, respects our intellect any more than the left does, please. Please. The right actually says, you're dumb unless you agree with us. And the left actually says, be emotional. What both sides don't realize is we can think for ourselves. Apparently, Candace was invited to some conversation on race relations in the White House. But let's be clear. Candace is very out of touch with reality. And putting on her cape and flipping over backwards for white people is not the vibe most of the black community is with, so she can't really advise on race relations. She can advise y'all on how to piss us off. She can advise you on how to be condescending. But deny, that's not going to work. At some point, there has to be accountability. And you can't say that there's not a racial argument when for 17 minutes, Candace, all you did was talk about race. It's funny how if we bring up race, we're trying to racialize things. But when they spew 20 minutes of rhetoric about race, they're just trying to prove a point. Come on now.
We have to stop taking the bait. We have to stop accepting a foolish election time narrative that is going to disappear on November 3rd. It's going to be like it never happened. The gap between Philando Castile, who, by the way, was a real victim, who I used my platform to speak out about, right? The gap between Philando Castile and George Floyd is exactly 4 years. What do you think, guys? What do you think this is really about? All they care about is power. All they want to do is destroy your neighborhoods, burn them down, shut down your businesses, and get you on government dependence. At the same time, poo-pooing you and telling you they're going to fight the big boogeyman of racism that doesn't exist as a problematic thing in this country, okay? Are there racists? Of course. Of course there are racists, guys. There's always going to be racists in this country. Do you want to know why? Because human beings are in this country. And there are black people that are racist towards whites. If you think I'm kidding, go look at some of the articles that are written on BuzzFeed. There are white people that hate white people. There are white people that hate themselves. There are Black people that hate Black people, right? I think the most racist things that have ever been said about me since I got into politics were said by other Black people, not by white people, believe it or not, right? The whole Uncle Tom Coon thing, that language that white liberals taught us, right? We call that to one another. So we have some nerve calling other people racist when we are the most vicious and racist people in this country when it comes to taking down our own. When we kill each other faster, when we insult each other faster, when we continue to cater to the bottom denominator of our society.
Let me summarize my thoughts. 1, Candace is wrong. Black people are not catering to the lowest common denominator, and it's something that no other group of people does. Last time I checked, there were white terrorists who have monuments erected to them, slave owners that are printed on our money, whole countries worth of people who are forced in their history books to idolize thieves and thugs, rapists and murderers. We have white people that have killed millions of Black people who are upheld as pillars in world history. We have whole companies established on the backs of theft of land and people, such as De Beers. We have whole countries where we have healthy, amicable relationships with them. When we have healthy relationships with them, such as Great Britain, de-emphasis on the great, who are known for raping and pillaging throughout the earth. Our own country currently has swept under the rug the actions of a few white men, military men. And although they didn't get outside with signs and picket, what they did do was blast on their radio waves, blast on their television shows and in their newspapers how these criminals who set out to kill the president of Venezuela, Maduro, how they were just misguided and looking for money, how they were just out of touch with reality. Make no mistake, we may be poor collectively, and we do not have the means to do anything but picket, but there's a form of rioting and a form of picketing and a form of protesting that whites do. They're just able to do it a little bit more eloquently because they have radio stations and newspapers and magazines and internet outlets to do it on. And as to violence, it's easy to pick out the least committed crime in America and the 4,700 Black people that were arrested for said crime in 2018 and try to make it like that small percent of the population has anything to do with the rest of Black America. But if you want to pick out all of the robbers and murderers in the Black community, which make up 0.09% of our population, not even 1% of 1% of the population, and make it like it's an epidemic. If you want to say that we're catering to the lowest common denominator of society, then you better call these whites out too for the rape that they commit disproportionately, for the abuse of women and children they commit, for the aggravated assault that they commit, and for the upholding of some of history's worst and most egregious criminals on their monuments, in their school textbooks, on their money. I get sick of debunking Candace Owens. She is disgusting. For a check. I'll talk to you guys later.